Hi, and welcome to the Cardano Hereafter party. Today is a special one. I have with me here Big Pey from Bloom Pools. Now, I know you all know him from his YouTube videos, from his tweets, and his pools themselves. But this is really an interview to get to know the man that no one else really knows, get to know the actual person. So here we have Big Pey. Now, I thought I'd begin with my first experience of you, because I did have a poll on the ITN towards the end, but very soon after, it was all being done on Haskell, and I was sent episode 1 of your video. So I've watched that many times, going through it. I set out everything up exactly how you did, and using the Google servers, literally everything you did, I copied to get it up and running. And I'm sure that's the same with a lot of pool operators as well. So, so I've got to say, first of all, thank you. Big Pey, a.k.a. Peyton Wingit or Winget.
Yeah, something like that.
So which one is it? Yeah.
It's Winget.
Winget, right. That actually is a new one on me. Where are you from or where were you born?
So I was actually born in Springfield, Ohio. And that's where I'm from. I lived there the majority of my life. And then, once I was an adult and I was able to move, I immediately moved to Columbus to go to university for computer science and engineering.
You spent most of your growing up in Springfield. So tell me, what were your parents like? What did they do?
So my mom was a nurse and she was awesome. As soon as she had me pretty young. So as soon as, she knew she was pregnant, she was only 20 years old. So she's like, okay, it's time for me to grow up. So, while she was pregnant with me, she immediately went to school and got her LPN. And early on in my life, both of my parents divorced. So, my dad worked full time as a glass installer, auto glass installer, and my mom was an LPN, which is the 2-year nursing degree. And I lived with my mom for most of my life. When I was 13, I actually left and moved in with my dad. So it was a bit of a swap back and forth between my mom and my dad. And my mom she was awesome. She took good care of me as a single mother, and there were definitely some hard times there for her. Just being a single mom, it's hard without, with today's time, 2021, a single house income, with kids is pretty rough, so, and then I moved in with my dad, and he actually owned his own business, and he owned a glass shop, and he installed glass for people. And early on, even at 13, I realized that that's kind of long term what I wanted to do was run my own business, seeing what he did. And
I think everyone has dreams of starting their own business, and many never actually get round to it. But I think the reality is it's just a matter of luck, really. Even, no one just sets out, so right, I'm going to start a business doing this and then just go out and do it. Like for me, when I started my business with my wife, it was only because of the teamwork between me and my wife that we were able to create the business. So it was complete luck, really.
Yeah, I guess especially with Bloom, like I fell into it. Like I definitely had like I'm going to start this own business. I'm going to do this passively while I'm in school, and it's going to make me a little bit of side income, and I want to process transactions for the network. But, it actually being a full-time thing that I do, that I think about every second of the day, I fell into, for sure.
Yeah, sure. So actually, how did you get into crypto in general?
Really, like everybody else, it was greed. I was I was probably 15 or 16 years old, and I was working for $8.10 an hour. And I was building computers at the time. I was like flipping computer parts on Craigslist, and the computer parts that I was flipping, I ran into a guy when I was selling him the GPU that I bought for cheaper, and I was making like a quick $50. And I was like, hey man, like what are you, because he was buying 2 GPUs off of me at one time. And I was like, what are you using 2 GPUs for? I'm like, they're different GPUs, so you can't SLI them. You're not using them for gaming, and he was like, I'm mining on them. He's like, I'm mining Ethereum. And I'm like, mining? And he's like, yeah, man, you can take computer parts and process transactions for the network and earn a return off of that. And I already had, a couple GPUs at home that just sit there and do nothing, because like I would buy and sell on Craigslist. And I was like, well, I went home that night and just stayed up all night, like, learning about mining, learning about Ethereum, learning about Bitcoin, and just, fell down the rabbit hole in probably 2015 or 2016. And then I just mined for a while, and it was still, it was greed. The only thing that made me interested in it was greed until I found Charles Hoskinson's. It was first the TED Talk. It wasn't the whiteboard video. I watched his TED Talk. I want to say it was 2014 to 2016. It was sometime, and he talked about how 3 billion people are unbanked. And I'm like, wait. And then I started hearing about inflation. I started hearing about heard Peter Schiff, talking about the government, is they're printing. And it actually made me see the real use case for cryptocurrency and the financial freedom aspect, and not just, greed. And, from really after I watched Charles's video, I don't know, it sparked something in me, and unreasonably so. I'm not offering this advice to anyone else. And, ADA is less so undervalued than it was back then, right? So back then I shifted completely to every mining, I actually have a video back from 2018, and it was called How to Mine ADA. And it was just taking your mining profits and trading it into ADA. And that's what I did. Every paycheck I got, and they weren't much, $8.25 an hour, I put like a good portion of it, into ADA. And then I would trade all my mining profits into ADA, and I was an ADA maximalist. I had a disconnect. I didn't see the true value of Bitcoin at the time, because I'm like, well, if ADA is going to have extended UTXO and it offers all of the same things that Bitcoin offers, then why, I get a new laptop or a new Xbox every 5 years. Why is Bitcoin going to stay around?
So you saw the potential quite early on, would you say?
Yeah. With Cardano, I saw the potential very early on, and really I saw the potential in Charles too. And that's kind of what a lot of like ETH people say, is you guys are all following the vision of one person, and it's true. I mean, it's just blatantly true. He is who inspired me. And now looking back at it, as far as like what I've learned is, invest in people that you think can really change things. But at the same time, that's easier said than done, because we can always, fall victim to someone who's very charismatic,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what's your overall view of Charles Hoskinson? What are you drinking out of a jar, man? It's pretty trendy.
What? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I drink a lot of water, so these, I think this is the quart. The quart's perfect, man. But, so my overall opinion of Charles, it sounds cringy, but I always look, because I was young and I didn't really have a lot of great mentors in my life. As far as like entrepreneurs or people that like had a vision and actually enacted on that vision, like maybe one, maybe zero, So I really saw him as a mentor, So as soon as he started releasing these AMAs, and he would sit there and he'd be in his room and he would have a mirror with a draft behind him. And I would listen to his AMAs just every single day. Like every time he would release one, I would listen to his AMAs, and he would touch on, things that I hadn't heard about, things that were kind of, industry standards in software, like as far as like, the flow state, or, learning things, or like he was just always on the upper echelon of what people are figuring out. Like, for example, lion's mane, for example, the neurogenesis that you receive from taking lion's mane every day. I heard that on Joe Rogan first, but that's a good example as far as like what I meant by he was constantly introducing me to new things at a young age that helped me, learn things quicker, build routines better. So, I always saw him, as a mentor, as someone to learn from, and I still do see him that way. And my overall opinion of him is good. He's always been, very kind to me. The video that you saw, the how to create a stake pool video, he retweeted that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he retweeted that when I posted it. And then 2 months prior to that, I made a video, and it was my first ever face cam video. And I said, he made a tweet, and he said, hey, if anybody on the incentivized testnet, if you're running a stake pool, just make a quick 10-minute video about who you are, why you're running your stake pool, and like what you think about Cardano, like why you're here. So one of my first ever it was literally my first face video. I made it, and then I was one of the first people to do it, and I added Charles, and I said, here's who I am. I've been here for years, and now is finally my time to participate in the network. And he retweeted that as well, and that really did boost my channel. I was probably getting like, back then the views were pretty scarce, man. You're getting good videos, 100 views, a great video like I killed it is 300 views,
Well, that's where I'm at now. So
Yeah, but like you're at that like in the very beginning though, like at least in my opinion,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. No,
Whereas
agreed,
like
agreed.
that's what the Cardano effect would get back then sometimes. You know, like if you're like at the like you're in the top 1% of content creators, you know, your best video is like 100 views. You know,
Mm.
it was weird times, and I wouldn't reach that until you know he gave me that first retweet, and it kind of pushed me up to maybe like 100 views per video. You know,
I've seen it happen with other people since then. You know, Charles retweets someone's video, and all of a sudden they're huge with a massive Twitter following.
and
And
that's
they're
really just because of how YouTube works, like and Twitter as well. Like it's all algorithms. You know, as soon as you make like a killer like I call them like I don't really have a name for it, but the videos that do better than all of your other videos by like a 10 or 15x, that puts you in a new part of the algorithm. So from then on out, if you consistently keep coming out after that, you know, moonshot video, your views are consistently higher after that. So that's why you keep seeing that effect. So, you know, I look at Charles in a really high light because he, you know, I don't think that I would be where I am today without him, you know, both from his mentorship through his AMAs indirectly, you know, him sharing my stuff early on, and also just his kindness. You know, I asked him to come on my channel when I had, well, you know, no subscribers. You know, I probably had like, you know, 500, you know, to 1,000. And he still came on.
I didn't think you were going to come on mine, actually. Yeah, I just sort of put it out there, and I wonder if I could, but I mean, I thought it would be the great first interview, seeing as that's how I started was by watching your videos. So and then
Yeah,
moving
as
to
soon as I
that,
saw it,
is
I
it
was
still
like,
happening?
yeah. And honestly, again, you know, it's a little bit from Charles too. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have if it weren't for this, but the way that I look at anyone who invites me on for an interview, I'm like, well, Charles, you know, came on my channel when he had no idea who I was. I was getting no views, and it's like I owe that same respect to everyone else, right? If
Oh,
someone is
God.
asking you to speak with them, then like let's speak. You know, it's like I do this full time now. You know, I would love to, you know, kind of have a discussion with anybody in Cardano because I felt like I was given that same, you know, outlook. And that's another thing, you know, that I learned from him, you know, and I've met him in person a couple times now, and each time he's treated me with kindness and respect. So, you know, I do hold Charles in a pretty high light, you know.
Okay, okay. So the ITN is really where you built your following on YouTube. So, I mean, that was an audience mainly full of pool builders. But I know at the time you were saying that you know you were trying to increase your pool, and your pool was just getting bigger and bigger. You know, did you see that or envisage that transitioning to what Bloom is now?
I mean, not, no, but yeah, like after I made the how to create your stake pool video, I mean, I thought about it and I was like, because I kept going down that path. Like I made the how to create your stake pool video. I pushed further and I was like, okay, here's the type of computer that you need to build for. And I kept thinking, I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to make a video on how to build a computer because I know how to do that very well. And then I'm going to start building these nodes. I'm going to be, and then I stopped myself and I'm like, you know, this isn't going to be your customer base. You know,
Mm,
your customers are going to be delegates, you know, people, you know, wanting to learn about Cardano and not wanting to learn the technical aspects behind stake pool building.
mm,
So after I made those videos, I realized I'm like, okay, you know, I have to shift focus because in a month and a half, you know, these viewers, you know, are going to be my competitors. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm willing to help out, you know, my competitors. But all of my content, 100% of it was how to build a stake pool and how to help people with stake pools. And there really wasn't too many people interested in Cardano yet that were just delegates. There was a few, you know, but I want to say like 50% of the people back then, at least, all were wanted to be a stake pool operator. So I had to like kind of in a weird way shift away from what people were clicking for into
mm.
something that people weren't clicking for yet. So I was very worried about it, but I started to shift that way. And also another person I owe great respect to is the Cardano effect as well. You
Mm.
know, they let me come on their channel, you know, probably 3 or 4 times during the ITN days to have discussions about things. And that really helped out as well, you know, and
Yeah, I mean, at that time, the Cardano effect was the only form of news for anything Cardano related, and so technically, you were more of a competitor to them.
The Cardano effect had the day before Shelly's released, they had a podcast where they had 7 other stake pool operators on to talk about Cardano, to talk about Shelly, and also introduce their stake pool and what they're doing. That was very kind of them. They didn't have to do that. And that's actually where I introduced Bloom. So they helped out a lot of us early on.
Well, I certainly didn't see that audience would transition into delegates in the way they did. So it's interesting to know that you made a conscious decision to shift the channel, as I didn't really notice a sudden change in what the channel was saying.
Well, there is a bit of overlap too, because back then, and I was like, and I still am a little bit now, but a little bit less so. Like back then, it's just like what I loved. Like I loved learning about all the tech, but I know a good bit of it now, like just at least the basic protocol layer stuff. So back then I was just so excited about it. So the reason that probably felt organic is because I was still like, holding on to it, that I want to make, technical content, even though it was shifting. So I kind of like had to do a bit of both,
So Bloom is actually a team, and you're really the face of it, really. So tell us about the other team. What do they do?
So, let's start from the very beginning. Bloom, there's 3 of us, and it's me, Anthony, and Michael. Michael's a doctor, and he's had business experience for 50 years, right? So really, Michael just acts as an advisor. If we have any business questions or legal questions, we go to him, and he'll give us resources as far as like, oh, maybe you should contact this guy, or I've had this experience before. So he's very helpful, for advising us, but he really kind of stays out of the picture most of the time. Anthony is my partner, and he works, full time on this, just as I do. And in the very beginning, he built the website, and he pulled us all together as well. And I was the marketing and stake pool guy, so I built the stake pools. I learned all the technical sides, and I did all the marketing as well. And it's still that way now. But Anthony is also taken up, really him and I kind of both split. We both split the business aspect of it, and then he also maintains the site. And then whereas I'm marketing like on the internet, he markets like person to person. We have like wherever we are, we have Bloom cards everywhere. If people call us or send us an email, we, especially in the very beginning, we were going house to house, teaching people about Cardano, teaching people how to stake. I mean, he would devote, I would say, probably 20 hours a week, to going to people's house, setting up wallets, teaching them about Cardano, teaching them about, because you have to tell them the whole story. 3 billion people are unbanked. There's, the government's printing. Like you have to tell them the whole story, so that's kind of a big part of what he's done, is just going door to door and teaching people about Cardano. And then indirectly, those people have staked with us,
So going back to the launch of Shelly and the D parameter, what do you think that did to the small, more unknown pool operator?
So the D parameter was rough for small stake pool operators. And
Tell me about
if
it.
you go back and watch the Cardano effect or my channel, I mean, it was widely known. We were all saying it. We're like, this D parameter is going to murder small pools. And it was just fairly evident because I had a pool on the ITN, and my max during the ITN was 15 million ADA. And it's because I had a golden ticket for like a couple months. And then my max without the golden ticket was like 3 or 4 million, right? And that's for me making videos every day, showing up, like, really trying to gather delegation. I felt more so than other people because there weren't people making videos back then other than Rick, Philippe, and then Kaizen. And I didn't amass much stake. So then looking at it, the way the D parameter works is, the higher the D parameter, the more ADA you need to mint a block staked to you, but you get more ADA paid out per block. So it didn't actually have an impact on the rewards But for a small pool operator, it meant everything, because instead of 1.5 million or 2 million ADA that you need right now to mint
I
a
had
block per
that.
epoch, it was like 10 to 20 million ADA that you needed to mint a block per epoch. Like it was just a nuts amount of ADA. And I'm sitting there looking at that like, that is what I gathered in the last 6 months. I felt working harder than most people. So how can the average person gather, that much ADA to do this? And
Yeah, we started off with that exact same problem. Very quickly we were at 2 million ADA, but we just weren't minting the blocks, and without the blocks, people weren't getting paid. So we were lost delegation that way to larger pools ultimately.
and it's a 5 day epoch too. It wasn't like the 1 day epoch during the
Exactly like on the
ITN.
IGN, yeah.
So for 5 days, you don't get rewards. And then you got to think about that from just a very simple perspective, a customer perspective, a user perspective. I'm not getting paid every 5 days. That's it. And then the other big kicker was the minimum cost per epoch, the 340 ADA. If you go ask some, it's tricky right now because some small pools are like, that's the reason we stay alive is that 340. But looking at it from a numbers standpoint, I personally would not delegate my ADA to a pool with 1 million ADA because of the fees it charges, because of the minimum cost per epoch. So the 340 ADA is taken out of the total amount of rewards, 340. So let's say you earn 1,000 ADA from one block in an epoch, because one block is usually like, I want to say it's anywhere from like 800 to 1,000, but it's always changing, of course. And you earn that. The 340 is subtracted from it, but because the rewards is so small for a small pool, that 340 is a much larger amount. So you're paying like 15%, 17%, 20% fees. So what I was really calling for initially, and I mean, honestly, I still would if people were complaining about it, but for months I was saying, if we want to help small pools, there's a few things that we have to do. And I said this all the way until December, and then it kind of just got forgotten about. I said we have to lower the minimum cost per epoch so the fees for smaller pools can be competitive to those of larger pools, and we also have to, lower the D parameter faster,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like that D parameter could have come down a hell of a lot faster. Definitely for us, it was very painful in those days.
Well, and considering it's still in the code now too, like it's like we're at like phony D equals 0 right now. It's still in the code. They can just raise it at any time.
Which is actually what they said they couldn't do. I think once it reached 0, that it requires some sort of hard fork. Well, I think pretty sure that's what Charles said in one of his videos anyway.
I mean, maybe it does, and maybe I'm misspeaking, but a lot of other prominent people in the community have stated the same thing. I'm not going to say any names, but people that I respect that have a higher technical knowledge than myself are raising this as a, hey, why can't we, remove this from the code? Because from my understanding, it is a parameter, but maybe there's something else written in the code that these people don't know about or that I don't know about that says if 0, then no, you can't move back up from there,
So then IOG and they bring out their 20 pools, which I didn't think was any good for the small pool operator. But how did you feel about that?
At first, I was very bombastic about it, but then I thought about it and I was like, well, they have a large amount of ADA, and I couldn't really blame them after that point. But what it kind of did though is it set a bad example, especially for the people that believe that, one pool, per person or one pool per entity. When the creators of the protocol are releasing 20 pools all at once and stating that we're operating in a sense that is going to provide us the most value, it kind of sets the standard for the protocol from then on out.
That was actually going to be my next question. Did that give the green light for multi-pools in your opinion?
I mean, I honestly think that even without that, it would have still given the green, like even without that, people would have still done it because, I mean, this kind of all goes back to, and I might misspeak a little bit, but from my understanding about, Charles and Vitalik's, mess up where they weren't friends with each other, the argument was over code is law, right? Because on one side you had Vitalik stating, no, we should fix this. We need this ETH back. We can remove the ETH from the scammers and give it to their wallets. And Charles is saying, no, we fucked up. Code is law. Scammers have the money. We can't change the code. We can't change the blockchain. And then that leaves and he goes and starts Cardano. Right? So I am under that opinion as well. If someone was hacked in Cardano and we lost like a few billion ADA to some malicious actor, I am not going to be jumping to say, hey, let's all get together, change our code, and take their ADA away, because that's bullshit. You know, code is law. And saying that, that also needs to be thought into the parameters that we have that make the system as far as stake pools. Because if I say, oh, you know, my company, you know, we're a good actor, we only have one pool. Well, what happens when a knot changes and now I need X amount of ADA for my pledge, but this asshole over there had 30 pools, like 1%. Like they have 30 pools, so all of the ADA, you know, that we're worried that they're not going to have for pledge, they have it now, right? Yeah. So expecting someone ethically to affect their future in their business for the decentralization of the protocol is not going to work long term. It's not going to at all, because all of those actors that are hidden are going to be acting in their best interest. And this is honestly one of the issues that I wanted to bring up with Meld, right? And the podcast was canceled. It was supposed to be right after this. But one of my main points that I was going to bring up to them was, no, we're not, of course, we're worried that you're going to rug pull and steal money from people, but that's not the real issue here. The reason that you leave such a bad taste in our mouth is because you come to our system with no stake in the system, no pledge, no value, nothing, and you're extracting $200,000 per epoch with no stake in the system. And that's how proof of stake is designed, so that I have a stake in the system, so I'm going to want to act in the best interest of the system long term. And the fact that an actor can come into the system with no stake, with no pledge, and profit more than people that have been here for years, and then they don't have to provide any value back.
I mean, yeah, if you combine all the profits of every stake pool, you'll probably find it's not the profit that Meld are making in that such short amount of time.
But, yeah, because we've been getting, Bloom has been getting shit for a year now. You know, we've been up for a year. And I mean, in one epoch, I mean, they make probably 50 times the amount that we do, but it's not. And that's the thing though, is as soon as you start going down this path of, oh, they make more money, it's not even about the money. It's the principle. It's the fact that they have no stake in the system. So if the system fails, they lose nothing.
Yeah, and the thing is...
and they're earning it, though. They're earning the pledge. So we're saying, oh, they have no stake in the system. Well, now they do. So now they can pledge it when the protocol even works correctly. And that's why we're so worried about them.
And if it is a big scam, the way they will get away with it is the fact that they're not scamming one person for a large sum of money. They're scamming lots and lots of people for tiny amounts of money who will not chase them up on it. I was going to ask you about Meld, but actually I was hoping your interview would have taken place already. So moving on then, so what's your view on the 1PCT pools and the Binance group of pools?
So the 1PCT pools, again, I don't have a quarrel with them. And even with Binance, I still don't have a quarrel with them, but I wish the protocol was designed in a different way. I don't feel that people that don't have stake in the system should be able to profit from the system, nor should they be able to vote in the system. So my main quarrel is with Binance, right? Binance is profiting from the system with, it's not even like someone chose them. At least with 1% pool, you or I could have chose them to process our transactions. Whereas Binance, half the people that have their ADA on Binance are either trading or they just don't know any better. So they even have less stake in the system than 1% pool, right? So really, I put Binance at the top of the hierarchy of, quarrels that I have with people. And I don't think that exchanges should be able to vote or stake. I think they should be enterprise wallets with limited capabilities for only, moving ADA back and forth. That's it.
So let's just say for a minute that Binance had their enterprise wallets with limited capabilities. And but then Binance said, okay, we just won't sell ADA. we won't list it on our exchange. Which do you think would be worse?
I think honestly, them having the ability to vote and stake is worse. It's way worse
Okay.
because
So,
we don't need Binance. You know, we really don't.
but I've got to ask you the question that so many people have probably asked you a million times before, but here's your chance to say, why do you have so many pools?
So you kind of need the story here, the very beginning. So when Cardano first released, K was at 150, right? So when K was at 150, the saturation point off the top of my head, is, I want to say it was about 211 million
It was something
per
like
stake
that, yeah.
pool, right? And you know, we came out the gate, you know, swinging. I released 3 videos in 3 days on the release of Shelley. I went on the Cardano effect, and you know, we had people from IOG delegating to us. We had people from Emergo delegating to us and sending us photos of it. And you know,
I was pretty sure Charles was actually delegated to one of your pools. Yeah, I think I saw in one of his videos that it had Bloom on Daedalus. I think you even referenced it in one of your videos.
oh, it was okay. I know who it was. It was Darko. It was one of the developers. It was
All right, okay.
It was one of the developers, and it was something that Input Output released. But you know, we garnered a lot of stake in a short amount of time. But back then, you know, ADA was 10 cents, and you know, I want to say at that time, I don't know, I was probably making like $15,000 a year or $20,000 a year, right? And
That's great.
I was hype. I was so excited. I was like, oh, I am living life, you know, because I was a college kid. I was having no income. I had some savings. I was working for like $10 an hour before, and I was so happy to even just have like a little bit, you know, and also so thrilled that so many people showed us so much support in the system. I'm like, this was literally the best case scenario, you know, from the release of Shelley. I'm like, this is just amazing. I never thought that this could have gone as well as it did, you know. So then we start to get, you know, a little bit more price movement. And I want to say we were probably at, you know, 30 cents around the K increase. And I think we maxed out, you know, as far as stake. I want to say we got in total, our highest amount was around 390 million ADA up front. You know, but as more stake pools come out that have, you know, better value propositions or value propositions that are more relative to the people that are delegating, obviously, you know, we're going to lose some of the stake over time because there are just, you know, more options and, you know, more value propositions, right? So we've definitely gone down a lot in stake, and it makes perfect sense. There's more pools, K's higher, you know, there's more value propositions. And, you know, so over that time, you know, and still, so the code is law argument really does fall true here. So we had 2.5 million ADA pledged to both of our main pools when we started. And so then we fast forward, you know, about 5 months, the K increase is announced in December. And I was like the black sheep in the community because I always tell it how I think, you know, and I said like, well, what's the point of increasing K when pledge doesn't even matter? If you open up the Ouroboros paper, Ouroboros Preos, you know, it was all designed around limiting the number of pools with K based on pledge. And pledge does not function. Then I did the math in the video and said, hey, we're pledging 2.5 million ADA to both of our pools. And I had the calculations up and I was like, that's making us an extra 34 ADA a year.
Yeah. So I remember thinking at one point, oh, well, the more I've got as a pledge, the better the rewards will be. Then I start speaking to people in the know, and then it turns out it's actually going to make no difference at all. So then I'm left thinking, why have a pledge at all when I can just stake it to my own pool?
So then you start to think, you know, what is value deterministic in this ecosystem? What is it? It's ADA. It's pledge. That's it. Pledge not working is the reason that Meld can come here and suck up all that ADA each epoch, whether they do good things with it or bad things. Pledge not working is that reason. So I stated back then, why increase K when pledge doesn't work? We will get more decentralization from increasing K if we fix A naught first. So let's fix A naught, and then we should increase K, because then we'll get the proper decentralization effect that was supposed to happen as it was written in the paper, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, because I'm going to tell you guys exactly what I'm going to do. I normally, let's say pledge worked and I needed 2 million ADA to open up another pool. I normally would look at the cost of opening up another pool and make the decision to either buy the ADA if I had the money, or to stay as I am now and tell my delegates to leave. And I was like, well, we can sum up the ADA for the extra pools. And that was my thing was, we are acting in the best interest of the system based on how it was written. So if A-Not actually worked, we would still pledge the million to have the pools up in the first place. Falling back to my beliefs about code is law, right? Mm-hmm. Because I don't believe that we should ethically require people, you should, because then you start to get into, well, how many of us have our DigitalOcean or Google Cloud or Amazon Cloud, or, how many people are at my company? Well, we know there's 3 people at Bloom with voting power, right? So does that mean my company's more decentralized? Does that mean we get 3? Or no, you're one person. It's a bunch of bullshit, in my opinion. What matters is code. There has to be something that's value deterministic in the system to limit the number of pools from one person. And the only thing that is value deterministic in this system at this current time is ADA. And it doesn't work. It's not functioning. So now we have people like Meld and people like the 1% pool that don't have stake in the system. 1% pool does now, but they don't have stake in the system, and they're extracting all the value, in further decreasing decentralization in the ecosystem, right? And that's why, that's why I have 6 pools, because if code was law and it still worked, we still have the ADA pledged, and we've had it pledged since it was 10 cents, that we have stake in this system. That's my reasoning behind it. And that I always ask those people, how many pools is okay? And you know what they always say? 3. 3's okay.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, as it was going to be one of the questions I was going to ask you, actually, because you have 6 pools, but across all pools, you're running at 50% capacity. Now, I mean, I know now you're saying that pledge makes no difference anyway, but wouldn't it have been better to combine all those pools together and run at 100% capacity?
And I also don't like my delegates, always worrying about saturation. I like to have them around, the 20 to 50 million range, because they're not worried about saturation. They could just stake and forget,
So going back to your code is law philosophy, how many people do you think it should be required to operate 51% of the network and still class it a decentralized blockchain?
Well, there's that MAV article. I think the MAV article, I was included in it. Did you read that?
No, I haven't seen it. No.
So it's called, oh, dude, the article's laughable. It is laughable. So it's called the MAV article, and it's Cardano's MAV, and it's called the minimum attack vector for Cardano. They just came up with this term, and they said that 21 people is how many people they would need to coerce. And they listed me on there. They listed like, IOG. They listed like Emergo, CF. Like they had to coerce all of us to take over 51% of the network. And I think the number was 21 with the math that they came up. And what's so funny is they get into the reasons. They're like, okay, here's how you could control, one of your, one of these MAV operators, right? Here's how you could gain access to the keys. And one of the things they listed was sexual coercion. Like, hey, you like Cardano or something? And just slowly trying to infiltrate my company.
But you laugh, but actually that is a serious technique. I think it's been used by, or at least they're worried about it, like MI5, FBI, like Chinese espionage. I think they were scared they were going to use it as a tool there as well.
One rogue girl SPO, just getting 21 of the of the largest stake pools, coercing all of them and collecting all of their keys. It just, I don't know, the sexual coercion one, I died laughing. There were a couple other ones that were pretty funny too.
So moving on, you were a Cardano ambassador. Now, were you bothered when you were removed?
Yeah, yeah, it did bother me. It was definitely a sore spot for me. I just thought it was kind of like unreasonable, and that was also like my first title, is like the first thing I did for the community, and like I was nominated as that. So like, I liked it, and I also enjoyed having the ability to speak to all of the great people that were in the Slack channel, because I could message a lot of people from IOG. I could message a lot of people like from the Cardano Foundation and from Emergo. So it was very useful for me as a podcaster because being respectful, I could just message Sebastian and say, "Hey, Sebastian, my name is Peyton. I'm a Cardano ambassador. Would you be interested in coming on my podcast?" And it all started with the stake pool argument. And I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, like what they did was BS in my opinion. Like they came out with a new rule and stated that if you are a content creator, you can not advertise your stake pool. So then I went to them and said, this is a bullshit rule because it's targeting stake pool operators in particular. I raised it on Twitter, I raised it everywhere, and this came up after they had removed 5 of my videos in a row. They just keep removing them off Reddit, off Telegram, and the people that were doing it were other SPOs. So this was just bothering me. I'm like, oh, well, it's clearly a biased rule because I can get on here and say, hey, come to my website, cardanogambling.io, and gamble all your money away. And that, dude, you could get on Reddit, click one of the headline articles, and the headline articles, and this is why it made me so mad, is because of the low value content that gets through Reddit often, where Charles Hoskinson states that he spoke with Elon Musk in the past. Like just some stupid article like that. Headline of Reddit. You click it, to the right side it says, oh, come to our gambling website, bitgambling.io. So I'm like, okay, these people can post articles with gambling advertisements on it, but my video that's trying to provide real education, real value to the community, I can't advertise my stake pool for 30 seconds at the very start. And it's not like I'm making clickbaity $8 to $1,000 videos or $8 to $50. I understand that some people may not see the value in my content, but I am not producing useless crap. Like I'm not making the $8 to $1,000 videos, right? And you know what they told me when I brought up this? I was like, this is, I can advertise gambling. They sent me to the trading forum and said, you can advertise your videos here now. Went to the trading forum. Guess what it was? 8 to 1,000, 8 to 100. So it's like you guys are grouping me in here. And then the people that were moving my videos, half of them were stake pool operators. And the people at the Cardano Foundation that had me removed, there was moderators, and there was 6 of them. And Charles even told me this. He said, I don't understand what you did over there, but you had 6 people get together and state that if Pey isn't removed, then we will all leave.
Wow. I didn't know that. So how did that make you feel?
It made me feel bad because I was in this hard place. And if you go watch my video where I talked about it, I say, I tried to be the bigger person. I said it's all water under the bridge because a lot was happening. We were getting the limelight. We were just getting listed on Coinbase. We just had the Mary hard fork, and I had a lot of new eyes on me, right? A lot. All of these new people. I mean, my views were tripled at this time, and I did not want to make a video at the highest point that Cardano has ever been at, trashing one of the biggest people in the ecosystem. I felt that it was just spreading negativity, and it was unnecessary, and the only person that would have benefited would have been me. It would have been, look, I'm not in the right, or I'm not in the wrong. Look at me, look at me. And I felt that it was selfish, even though I felt that it was wrong what they did to me, I didn't agree with it. And the people that were actually working for them, that I actually spoke to before I was removed, have all come to me and said, hey man, what happened over there was pretty fucked up. They have come to me and said that. But should I, in the light of everything that was happening, make a video and say, this is what they did wrong, this? No. It was a non-issue. I wish it could have worked out. Even after they removed me, I sent them an email and I said, I wish you all the best, and I hope that this can work out in the future. Because there's just no reason to have issues and quarrels when the whole point of all of this is to try to, better the world and bring financial freedom to people and push cryptocurrency adoption. What's the point of me having a tussle in a video with a few people that work for the Cardano Foundation? And if you remember back then, Charles actually invited me onto his podcast. He said, Big Pey, do you want to come on my channel? After I posted the tweet that I was, fired from the ambassadors. Mm-hmm. And I responded initially and I said, yeah, I would love to come on your channel and talk about everything they did to me. Well, if you remember, that video never happened.
And then a month later, Charles calls you a money whore.
Mm-hmm.
We know you admire Charles. We all admire Charles, but that must have hurt, right?
Yeah, it did, but it was to me, like, it hurt, but I felt that it was in a joking manner. I really did. Because
it seemed like he was joking.
Yeah, and I had just did he was commenting on the podcast that we just did. And then 2 weeks prior to that podcast, we actually, I saw him in person, and chatted with him for a while, and then during that AMA, but he was right too. What he was saying, it was a joke, but he was correct. So on YouTube, there's this feature, and I'm sure you've seen it. When you're finished with this podcast, there's 3 options that you have. You have beginning roll ads, mid roll ads, and end roll ads, like outro ads. In the mid rolls, you can actually go in there and you select where they go themselves. But above that, there's an option that says, let YouTube automatically place the ads based on when there's stops in the conversation. So back then, I wasn't making much for my YouTube channel. I was probably making like $200, $100 a month from it. And that's what I would do, because it made me like not a substantial amount of money. I'm like, well, I'll just let YouTube do all the work for me. So I would put it in the stops in the video. And then Charles said that he's a money whore. And then the comments on that video, there was like 10 people that all said the same thing. Like, hey man, there are way too many ads on this video. So I went in there and I'm like, dude, YouTube places it. They always have. No one's ever complained about the amount of ads on my video. So why is this one the kicker? So I go in there and I look at it, and there were 27 ads in a 1-hour podcast. 27 ads that YouTube placed. I mean, because they look like little lines, little blue ribbons. It was like
the little yellow lines, yeah.
So I posted a tweet after that, and it was a pic of the 27 ribbons, and made the joke like, yeah, you guys are right. I am a money whore, and YouTube made me,
So, moving on, if I remember correctly, in one of your videos, I think it was the one where you were interviewing Pancake Swap. Did you buy a gun? And was that a response to a genuine sort of threat, or was it just for safety?
No, I mean, so when I was younger, I was actually robbed at gunpoint, and it wasn't, I mean, I was young, I was a college kid, so it wasn't for much, so looking at, it now, and me somehow being like an influential figure, for Cardano, if someone was willing to rob me for, a couple $100, what would someone be willing to do for 1,000 or 10,000, and I really believe that the only people that can take care of us is ourselves, and not necessarily, I mean, like, let's say I call the cops, how long is it going to take for them to get here, right? Or if I even have the ability to call the cops. So, no, I have been training myself on how to use a gun properly, and how to safely use a gun. I'm planning on taking a class and also getting my concealed carry.
In the UK, guns just seems like a very crazy thing for anyone to have.
Yeah, it's not really like that here. Not at all.
No, absolutely.
I was to show you how crazy it is here. And the laws are backwards too. So I've always just wanted a pistol, right? But I couldn't buy a pistol until I was 21, and I just recently turned 21. But when I was 18, they will sell you anything but a pistol. So the day I turned 18 years old, I walk in there with my driver's license and I said, I turned 18. And I was like, what can I buy? and they showed me everything I could buy. I could buy an assault rifle, I could buy a shotgun, I could buy anything but a pistol. So I was like, I'll take the AR-15. So it was pretty funny because the guy was like, "You're the first guy I've ever seen buy a gun this early," So then my first gun was an AR-15.
Wow.
I got that at 18.
An AR-15 is probably one of the few guns that I've heard about, and they seem to be the most sort of customizable. There seems to be a whole geek thing around it. It's a bit like Call of Duty or something. You can just get every add-on that you can just add on to it and make it better in some way.
Well, it's crazy how accurate they are too. Like, I mean, I can sit at like 50 yards with no real practical experience or training and hit something that's very small from 50 yards. Like, and if you are actually good with it, I mean, who knows how far you can shoot that thing,
Yeah, man. But yeah, like I said, to someone in the UK, that is just crazy. I mean, we don't even do hunting here either, really. But I can't imagine you do much hunting with an AR-15 either.
Yeah, well, if we did, there would be no animals left,
Yeah, anyway, I mean, I completely understand why you got a gun, being where you are. I mean, you got a lot more money now. But with all this money, what does this enable you to do for the Cardano community?
It's a great question. And we talked about, when the K increase came, I didn't even finish that, but the price of ADA was 30 cents, and I still wasn't making like a large amount of money at the time, whereas now I do feel that I make, a large amount of money. So then, back then, when I was making, a couple $100 a week, I was putting an inordinate amount of time into this for what I was receiving, right? And nothing owes you anything, for the amount of work that you put in. But I felt that I was putting a lot of time in and I wasn't being, paid for that amount of time. It's not that I deserved anything, but, from a person standpoint, you often look at the things that you're doing, and what derives the most value out of that, for yourself and your future. And, that has shifted, I see it as a pendulum, whereas, I wasn't, earning enough for what I was putting in, from a personal standpoint. And now I feel that I'm earning more, than I am personally adding back relative to value. And, the reason that is because it happened so quickly. I mean, this happened in
less than a year.
From December. December we were at like 15 to 20 cents, maybe 30 cents. And,
more, yeah.
2 months ago we hit $2.40, right? So that is my first thought. And honestly, it made me depressed for a while. Because I felt like I was earning more than I was putting in. And then I didn't.
Imposter syndrome. I think they call it imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had. I had imposter syndrome. And I just didn't realize what I had to do. And obviously what I had to do was just add more value, work harder, build a company, employ people, and, become somebody who, builds protocols, who adds value to these protocols, and, become somebody that, does add to cryptocurrency as a whole. And that is kind of what has been the silver lining of this, and what has helped me get over the imposter syndrome was, I didn't really have a choice on how far that pendulum swung this far. And also looking at it from, a personal standpoint, like I don't know what the price of ADA is going to be in 6 months or a year. So it's very hard. Like, when we make cost decisions, at what price should we make those decisions? To me, it should probably be at 30 or 40 cents. In my opinion, for the longevity of a business, your cost should be at 30 or 40 cents, because we don't know what the price of ADA is going to be. And I joined crypto at one of the worst. We went from $1.25 ADA to 3 cents. I saw it touch 2 cents.
I remember that.
So I have seen the worst, and I'm looking at this. I'm like, how, what is my company going to be making in a year? So as this pendulum swings, and as I want to add more value to Cardano, we have to look at it from, both a reasonable perspective, because macroeconomically we are in a crazy time. The repo markets, we're just locking up again. Did you hear about that?
No, I know absolutely nothing about the repo markets at all.
So, I mean, in 2019, the repo markets locked up. The feds, started doing their BS, and they were pumping a bunch of money into the repo market so they would unlock. And a lot of people believe that's why we had the big crash in 2019 or in 2020. But COVID's the one that popped it, right? But it was coming already from the repo markets. Well, the printing, just stopped that from happening, and it's still there. And the repo markets again are starting to seize up, right? So if we get another, big deflationary event, I do believe in crypto long term. I do believe in crypto, on a 5-year timeline. But as far as the next 6 months, I have no idea what can happen. I really don't.
But that's the thing. No one does. When you've been in it as long as we have, we see it go up, we see it go down. But when it goes down, people are crying. What's happening? It's crashing. People are jumping out of buildings, hanging themselves. And then when it's up, it's Cardano to the moon, Lambo all day long. But you also notice that, and in the dips, you notice that a lot of SBOs don't tweet so much about it. There's not so many Cardano tweets. But when it's up, you see everyone's tweeting. Everyone's trying to make as much noise as possible.
And even your YouTube views too.
Say that again.
Your YouTube views.
Right.
You'll notice this, and if you haven't already,
I haven't got those sort of analytics though. I haven't got as many analytics on that as you have.
Dude, you're gonna see it here soon. It's especially with Goguen coming out. I mean, it is insane. The price. I mean, I can literally probably put my YouTube views next to a price chart, and it has a definitely correlation, a huge correlation. So, and that's what I have to look at. So I'm trying to be reasonable when I think, okay, this is what I want to do, and just to be honest with you, I've already planned what I'm going to do, and what we are doing, and we're setting up an office. We're hiring a developer to start. We'd like to, have more developers, but we're building something, not just for us, but for everyone. So
okay, awesome.
And we will be releasing a white paper on that. I would say probably a month from now.
So yeah, moving on. Stake pool as a service. Now, I think you started that in March. How long has that been going on?
So I've actually stopped doing it. As far as how long, I was doing this really at the start of the launch of Shelly. And I was doing it all myself. Like I said, as I wasn't, making enough money to really cover the bills back then. So, I thought stake pool as a service because I, knew the skill was a great way to do that. So, I did stake pool as a service really, up until March. And then I merged with, because I realized that, I really enjoyed making the videos. And March is when I partnered with Andrea to start the stake pool as a service business. But we both went through some personal issues in that time. So we did actually split up and then stop the stake pool as a service business.
That was actually going to be my next question. So what happened there? Is this before or after the sort of blackout of his keys? He got locked out of his keys. What happened?
No, it was during, like that happened, right when that was happening. So, he had the key issues, there were also some personal issues that I was going through and that he was going through that, I can't get into. And that both, just caused, us. And I think recently, he did just start that back up, so if you are interested in stake pool as a service, then, feel free to reach out to Andrea.
Yeah. I think he's doing something with NFTs as well. Is that right?
Yeah, he is. He released an NFT project. So
we're getting to the end of the interview here. Sorry, it's not a Lex Friedman 4-hour job, but I've got one question before my final question. And didn't you get an Ada Lovelace tattoo?
That wasn't me.
Is that not you?
That was my partner.
Oh, Anthony.
Yeah, Anthony. Put that on screen. It's an awesome.
There you go. There it is now. Yeah. That is pretty cool. So now it's the final question. Now you said already that your issues with the protocol. So if you were to make the changes to make it better and fairer, what would they be?
So the first thing that comes to mind when you ask me that question is I don't think that, I should be making those choices. I think that there needs to be a discussion had, with throughout the whole community on what these parameter changes should be or or really anything. I think that there should be a general, long form discussion done on open forums, because I often believe that the right answer is somewhere in the middle with most things. When you're arguing with somebody, you usually have a few of your own biases. They usually have a few of their own biases. And, oftentimes the right answer is in the middle, but, from what I think would really benefit the protocol right now, would be Goguen. The first thing that comes to mind. Goguen released and preppy and beautiful and well done. The second thing would be an A-Not rework. I've always, ever since I had Umed and Sean on my channel a year ago, and Sean from Squid Pool, he actually designed a new curve for A-Not. And the way A-Not works currently right now is I always have to do it backwards. It's a linear function. It's a straight up line, whereas what he wants is an S curve. So it starts to go up exponentially at first, and then it goes down, and then it goes exponentially up again. And this local max right here will be the optimal pledge, right? And we can determine where that local max is based on changing the A-Not parameter. And that local max is for people with, 100,000 ADA or 300,000 ADA, whatever it may be. That's what you need to offer competitive rewards in your stake pool. And then it goes down and dips. So exchanges don't offer stake pools with that optimum pledge, because they'll actually earn more as we go through this curve. As it exponentially goes up to the max saturation, you'll actually earn higher for fully pledging a pool than you would for receiving delegation down here. Right, so that's the design of the S curve, and I think that, with obviously some research and rigor thrown into it, which is what IOG is doing right now, I think that is a huge protocol change that needs to happen, both for the decentralization for Cardano, and also, to keep out actors that don't have pledge.
Yeah, well, I think I agree with you with the 340 fixed fee. Even though it would make me less money, it would make me more attractive to delegators, regardless of my size. So I think I'm with you there.
Well, what would have to replace that is the because the reason that was actually put in place
is what I think would happen. The variable fee would be higher for everyone.
Yeah, well, it would have to be, at least in my opinion. There should have to be a minimum, because if you look at that 340, it 500,000 ADA or 1 million ADA, it's high. It's like 17, 20%, But when you're at like 50 million, I want to say it's at like 1%. Right. Well, the majority of pools aren't at 1%, or 50 million. So the variable min fee is probably going to have to be like 2.5%, to account for the loss from that, because at least in my opinion, there should be a minimum fee. Value should go back to the operators, because if you look at this like a supply and demand problem, there is a high supply of stake pools and a low demand of delegates right now. And that's because pledge, the value deterministic thing in the ecosystem, is not limiting the total number of pools, right? So, with an A-Not change and also with a minimum variable fee, I think that you could reasonably lower that minimum cost per epoch to 0 or to half, or, whatever that may be. And it's a lot of money now too. I'm making 300, it's like 340 ADA an epoch it's a lot for servers, but at the same time, as long as people aren't trying to extract value and they're not trying to just, make it like dollar and dime, because I put more money into my servers than I need to in preparation for Goguen. And I feel like a lot of people would do that, especially if they're here for Cardano. Whereas, I'm sure there's going to be some actors that, wouldn't do that. I've been watching this guy on YouTube named CoffeeZilla lately, and he goes into,
I've heard of that one.
It's amazing.
Quick flash of him on screen as well. So
it's amazing. CoffeeZilla does, he calls himself an internet journalist, and he looks into scammers, and he takes down, like, he looks into big Ponzi schemes or big scammers or big crypto scammers too, influencers that are making pump and dump coins. And it's great content. But what he has showed me is that I am naive. and that there are a lot more bad actors in this world than I ever would have thought would have existed. I personally, think that most people are going to act, in the right way ethically if they believe that's acting in the right way. But watching his videos and how willing a lot of people are to just take money from people or not act in other people's best interest, it's honestly, and I've just found him 2 weeks ago, but it's been changing my mind on a lot of things. And you know, that's why kind of code has to be law. We have to design code that keeps these bad actors in mind consistently.
So that brings us to the end. Really, it's the end of the interview. I gotta say, thank you, Peyton, Big Pey, for coming on. It was really good of you to do that. I mean, like I said, my Paul wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your episode 1 and episode 2 and getting me, out there and reaching out to the community to help build my Paul and things like that. So yeah, for that, I'm really thankful. I mean, you do get a lot of stick for what you do. All the, whether it's jealousy for the amount of money you're making or just maybe ethical differences, you definitely get a lot of stick for that. And but I've seen it before. I used to do stand-up comedy. Me and my wife, that's how I met my wife. We used to do stand-up comedy. And you get these comedians who's everyone's friend, but as soon as they become famous, everyone kind of turns on them. Like, oh, he's shit. He's a crap comedian. Yet a week ago, he was the best around. So it doesn't surprise me, really, that the successful pool owners get the stick that they do.
Yeah, and also to add on to that too is, I'm learning, I'm very young, so I'm learning how to, really be a person. You guys are watching me become a person on the internet.
I've also watched your apartment change quite a lot over the time as well. So you're changing as a person and you're changing apartment. I mean, the room you're in now, you obviously got a room dedicated to your YouTube channel.
Yeah, it is. It is nice having a separate office, and I'm really excited to have like an office where I can actually leave the house for once to make my videos. But
Well,
yeah, to really touch on that, I'm trying to learn and grow as a person, and you guys are kind of all watching me do that on the internet. So I'm going to make mistakes. I've made some mistakes in the past, but I'm really trying to learn and grow as a person to be better in the future. So
awesome, huh? So I mean, it's cool to hear. You're still trying to better yourself as a person, and thanks again for coming on the Cardano Hereafter party.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me on, and once we have more to talk about, come on again.
Thank you to everyone for joining us. Do give the video a good thumbs up. You can hit the subscribe button just there, and you can support our pool by delegating to ATM1. And we'll be back soon with more news and with more interviews as well.